right, welcome back to the Fighter Pilot Professor. I am your host, Meta, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about AI and dogfights. And also we'll be talking a little bit about, are you nervous or are you excited? And how do I know the difference? And how can I harness one or the other or both of those things to be successful? Glad you're here. We'll jump right in. But before we do, as always, hit that like button. Drive me up on the algorithm so you can find me, follow me on Instagram and YouTube, Fighter Pilot Professor. Drop your questions in the comments there and let me know what you want to talk about. And then you can get this podcast wherever you find your podcasts. Here we go. Welcome to the Fighter Pilot Professor podcast. I'm your host, Meta. And in the Fighter Pilot Professor podcast, every week we examine world events and your daily life through the mind of a fighter pilot. The episodes answer your questions harnessing my experience in 25 years of flying fighter jets and my PhD in history, policy, and strategy. You can tune in wherever you find your favorite podcast. You can follow me on Instagram and on YouTube, the Fighter Pilot Professor. So, back in 2020, and frankly, you may have missed this because lots of things were happening in 2020. Back in 2020, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA, executed, along with the Air Force, this trial called the Alpha Dogfight Trials. And basically what it was a simulated dogfight between two AI pilots in simulated aircraft. And they did it tournament style with the competitors fighting it out. And then the winning competitor eventually went on to fight against a human pilot in a simulated dogfight. And it won. And this was a big deal. Especially if you're a fighter pilot nerd like me, or if you were in advanced defense industry or something like that, and then it's a big deal to think about these things, right? We're on the verge of killer robots. Not really. Frankly, it was a very limited test series dogfight in a simulator, but DARPA and the companies involved learned a lot, and the Air Force learned a lot. DoD learned a lot about how AI works and how it can fly aircraft and that kind of stuff. Between then and now, so in 2022, 2023, and into early 2024, the Air Force put this particular AI software on its X-62 Vista aircraft out at Edwards Air Force Base, which is a test platform that can take different types of flight control software and can actually change the flight configuration or the flight characteristics of this aircraft. It's an F-16 based aircraft. It does some really interesting things, but needless to say, with different types of software in it, they can use this aircraft to simulate or emulate different flight characteristics of different aircraft. The other thing that it can do now is that you can load AI pilots and onto the aircraft, and it can fly the airplane just like it did in the simulator during the Alpha Dogfight Trials. So over the last few years, the Air Force and DARPA have been developing this AI pilot system to actually fly aircraft, and they've done several tests of it. And then, again, unless you are in this industry and you know these things, you probably did not hear about it, but back in the summer of 2024, the AI pilot flying the Vista aircraft defeated a real live pilot on multiple occasions in air-to-air dogfights, or as we call it in pilot parlance, BFM, basic fighter maneuvers. And while this is truly groundbreaking, I thought it would be interesting to sort of discuss why we're not quite to killer robots yet, right? We're not quite to AI totally executing, conventional offensive air operations all on their own. So the first thing to know with both the Alpha Dogfight Trials and with the simulated ones and the live fly ones is that there was a very specific set of rules for the aircraft involved, and so it sort of is a keyword, handcuffed the pilots in the real live pilots, the actual human pilots, in a way that would be semi-unrealistic. Some of that's for safety of all the players involved, and some of that's just to sort of see or provide the AI pilots a platform to test this capability out. So that in and of itself, I'm not going into the nitty-gritty details of all the rules, but needless to say that the rules sort of limited what could count as scores for kills and that kind of stuff, and so that sort of favored the AI machine. But on the other hand, what it revealed was just how much of an advantage machine learning and AI can be in these sort of situations. And so just to sort of break it down, what these 1v1 dogfights, or BFM as we say in fighter pilot land, what it requires the pilot to do is see and assess what the adversary aircraft is doing, and see and assess what their own aircraft is doing, and make very rapid decisions about how to maneuver their aircraft. And these are based on things like range, what we call aspect angle, so sort of the difference between which direction your airplane's pointed and which direction their airplane's pointed, heading crossing angle, which is a similar but slightly different measurement, and I have a whole other bunch of technical details that, as a pilot, when you're doing these types of engagements, you are constantly assessing mentally and visually and sort of piling up these cues that can tell you everything that you might want to know about what the adversary aircraft is doing. Similarly, you're doing the same thing with your own aircraft. What altitude am I at? How fast am I going? How many G's am I pulling? What sort of power setting do I have right now? And what are the capabilities of my own particular airplane? Obviously, a computer can make these sort of assessments much, much faster than a human pilot, right? And also they can take into account a much larger volume of data than a human can, right? And so whereas a human pilot is sort of taking brief snapshots, and let's say we're operating, human pilots operating on the 1/10 of a second sort of time frame, well, the AI pilot is taking in 10 times the amount of data and operating on, milliseconds sort of speeds, right? And so that advantage of being able to take in all that data and make faster decisions with more data means that the AI pilot can be more efficient and react quicker, and make better decisions about how the airplane needs to be employed against the adversary. And so that whole thing, although still in its nascent form, sort of shows what AI can do in a combat aircraft, right? And there's a lot of steps to get to where I think where we're going, but I think the first step that the U.S. military and other militaries are striving towards is these sort of manned, unmanned teams where you have humans flying aircraft and AI pilots flying other aircraft, and the humans tell the AI pilots to go do this sort of mission, and they're able to accomplish that mission, right, in this sort of human-controlled, teamed system between AI-piloted aircraft and human-piloted aircraft. That, I think, is the sort of next step that we're traveling towards, and indeed what the Department of Defense and other militaries say that they're traveling towards. What that looks like, I think, is going to be slightly different for every nation involved, but I think it will be really interesting. We've already seen several of these sort of systems beginning to fly out there. And so we're rapidly approaching, I think, a world where we have AI pilots flying aircraft teamed up with human pilots controlling them, or human controllers on the ground controlling them. And I think this is important to understand that, in my opinion, we won't be anytime soon, and hopefully never, in my opinion, again, be to a place where AI acts completely autonomously. In other words, there's no human in the decision-making loop or observing the decision-making loop of these machines. I think it's the best choice for everybody involved, unless we end up in the Terminator, I guess, right? The best choice for everybody involved to allow or enable some sort of human decision or override of these sort of systems. Nevertheless, all of this is very exciting and interesting, and we'll see where it goes in the near future. Hopefully we can update that soon. Okay, so I think it's good to talk about, like, what do I do? How do I deal with being nervous around something, and what do I do with those nerves, and what does that mean? Am I nervous or excited? I read an article, and then I saw a video similarly in the same vein, I should say, perhaps, about people who were taught to understand that the nerves that you feel before you do something big and important is your body's way of preparing, is getting excited for something, right? And it's okay. It's a normal part of your human reaction, shall we say. And I think that the idea that, or at least what the article said, right, is in the opposite, where people's parents or siblings or whatever, or teachers, coaches, etc., told them that, like, no, don't be nervous or whatever, right? Like, this was the worst possible outcome. So, it begs the question, like, what is the appropriate way to deal with these sort of, as you were, pre-game jitters, right? The pre-game jitters happen to everybody, or most everybody, right? And how do I deal with them? Well, I mean, the first thing is to know that they're totally normal, right? The second thing to know is, again, right, it's your body's way of sort of prepping for what's about to happen. And we've talked about some of this before, about, you get butterflies or sick to your stomach, you sweat, right? You like shake, however that is, right? And some of that is the adrenaline in your system, like gearing your body up to do what it's about to do, because it knows it's a big deal. Your brain has told it. Your brain has told your body that this is a big deal, that we're about to do this thing. And so we need to get up for it. So knowing is half the battle, as it were, right? And so knowing that this exists is one part of dealing with it, right? Additionally, I don't want to push it away, right? I want to be able to harness that, right? I don't want to be like, oh, don't be nervous. I actually want to feel those feelings, right? I want to harness that adrenaline. I want to use it for my advantage, right? I want to know that, hey, my brain is keyed up and super hyper observant. My body, I can hear things better than I used to. I can see things better than I used to. I will be slightly faster than I was before, whatever, right? And that's all a good thing, right? Where it starts to hurt you, I think, is when you let it sort of, those emotions overpower your preparation, right? And so that's the second key, in my opinion, is I need to prepare appropriately for the thing that I'm about to do, right? Practice my speech, if that's what I'm doing, practice my piano piece, practice my plays, whatever, right? Whatever it is that I am doing, I need to practice those things so that I have them down and know that I can do them under pressure, perform them when the moment matters, right? And so that's the second piece of it, right? The third piece of it is sort of, we'll say, doing your job parts, right? So, like, don't let that nerves or adrenaline sort of overpower your own capability, right? Like, make your body and your brain or make your brain, make your body observe the rules of what it is you're about to do, right? Know your job and prepare for it, and then harness that nervousness to do your job the best that it can, but don't let it get away from you, right? I need to keep it under control. And well, how do I even go about doing that? Great question, right? The how do I go about doing that, keeping it all under control, is, well, first back up to the recognize that this is going to happen, right? But then I think most importantly, right, is it's sort of what I'll call mental focus, right? I need to harness these things to then mentally focus on the things that I've prepared. I've prepared certain things to do the thing that I'm going to do. And so instead of letting my brain and my body run wild with all of the extra information that I'm gathering, right, and the extra adrenaline that's pumping, right, I need to just channel that into the thing that I've prepared. So know that it's going to happen, prepare in advance, and then channel that knowing, as it were, into the thing that I prepared in advance. Focus in very specifically on the thing that you're doing, right? Because what's going to happen is there's going to be all of this other sensory information coming in. Your brain, your body are processing the information at a much faster level, right? The stimulus involved are much higher, right? And I can easily become distracted by all those things. So I have to drown out all of that noise and focus in on the thing that I prepared, right? Whatever my job is, my speech, my position, my piece of music, whatever, right? I need to focus in on that one thing. And if I can do those things, then I can harness that nervousness. I can harness that excitement for good, right? And knowing that it's going to happen, it's going to allow me to prepare appropriately, right? There's also tons of other things you can do, right? Tons of sports psychologists, etc., have all kinds of good ideas about deep breathing and visualizations, and we've talked about some of these things, right? Visualizing in advance, controlling your breathing, etc., to help you sort of harness those things and focus your brain in, will even advance your abilities even further. So hopefully that helps to know the difference between nervous and excited. The answer is you're both nervous and excited, and that's a good thing. You should be ready for it, right? As always, drop your comments, hit like, follow me, get me up there in the algorithm, make it easier for you to follow my podcast, or to tell your friends about my podcast. Spread the word, right? Share it with somebody else. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Fighter Professor, wherever you find your podcasts. Have a good one.